The World at War and in Crisis, 1945. The first half of the 20th century was marked by unprecedented global conflict and rapid change. Two world wars and a massive economic depression reshaped nations and affected millions of lives. It was a time of great inventions, like airplanes and radios, but also great suffering, like the world wars and the Holocaust. Let's go through the key events of 1945, World War I, 1914, 1918. Tensions had been building between the major powers of Europe, who had formed two alliance blocs. The spark came in June 1914, when Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated by a Serbian nationalist. Because of tangled alliances, this local crisis led to a huge war. On one side were the Allies, including Britain, France, Russia, and later Italy and the United States. And on the other side were the Central Powers, Germany, Austria, Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and others. World War I was fought with deadly new technology like machine guns, tanks, poison gas, and airplanes. Fighting was especially brutal in trenches on the Western Front in France and Belgium. The war dragged on for 4 years, becoming one of the deadliest conflicts ever up to that point. In 1917, two major events changed things. Russia had a revolution, pulling out of the war. The Tsar was overthrown and later, a communist government under Lenin took power. This was the start of the Soviet Union, and the United States joined the war on the Allied side in 1917, providing fresh troops and resources. By November 1918, the exhausted Central Powers surrendered. World War I ended with armistice on November 11, 1918. The war had caused around 15 million deaths and massive destruction. The Peace Treaty, the Treaty of Versailles, 1919, placed heavy blame and penalties on Germany. Germany had to give up territory and pay large reparations. Many new countries were created in Europe out of old empires, like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, etc. The League of Nations was formed as an international organization to promote peace. Unfortunately, the treaty's harshness toward Germany and other unresolved issues laid the groundwork for future conflict. The interwar period, 1918, 1939. After World War I, the 1920s saw some recovery and cultural flourishing. The Roaring Twenties. Technology advanced. Cars became common. Radios brought entertainment and news into homes. And movies, silent at first, then talkies, became popular. However, the good times did not last. In 1929, the Great Depression began. The stock market crash in the U.S. triggered a worldwide economic downturn. Banks failed, businesses closed, and millions lost jobs. In some countries, the economic pain made people lose faith in democratic governments and look for strong leaders who promise solutions. This environment allowed dictators and extreme ideologies to rise. In the Soviet Union, formerly Russia, Joseph Stalin had become leader by the late 1920s after Lenin's death. He turned the Soviet Union into a totalitarian state, controlling every aspect of life, and pushed rapid industrialization, but also caused famine, like the Holodomor in Ukraine, and conducted brutal purges against his enemies. In Italy, Benito Mussolini and his fascist party took power in 1922, promising to revive Italian pride and economy. Fascism is a system with a dictator, strong nationalism, and often racism, where dissent is not tolerated. In Germany, the harsh Treaty of Versailles and the Depression created fertile ground for Adolf Hitler. Hitler led the Nazi Party, which was fascist and extremely racist, especially anti-Jewish. By promising to rebuild the economy and restore German greatness, Hitler became chancellor in 1933 and soon made himself a dictator. The Nazis eliminated political opposition, and Hitler began a campaign of persecution against Jews, blaming them and other minority groups for Germany's problems. This was the beginning of what would become the Holocaust. In Japan during the 1930s, militaristic leaders gained influence. Japan had industrialized and become powerful, but it lacked natural resources. So Japan's army invaded neighboring areas. They took Manchuria in China in 1931 and launched a full invasion of China in 1937, committing atrocities such as the Nanjing Massacre. Japan aimed to dominate Asia. World War II, 1939, 1945. The aggression of Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan led to the Second World War. The war in Europe started when Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939. Britain and France then declared war on Germany. Germany quickly conquered much of Europe with a tactic called Blitzkrieg, lightning war. By 1940, Nazi Germany occupied France and other countries, and with its ally Italy, it seemed unstoppable. Only Britain, led by Winston Churchill, held out, enduring the Blitz, German bombing of British cities. In June 1941, Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, breaking a pact he had with Stalin. This opened up a huge Eastern Front war. Then on December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, a U.S. naval base in Hawaii, which brought the United States fully into World War II on the side of the Allies. The Allies now included the UK, Soviet Union, USA, China, and many others. World War II was truly global. Battles raged across Europe, North Africa, and Asia Pacific. Key turning points. In the Pacific, the U.S. Navy won the Battle of Midway in 1942, stopping Japanese expansion. In North Africa, Allied forces defeated the Germans by 1943. In the Soviet Union, the Battle of Stalingrad, 1942-43, was a major defeat for Germany. After that, the Soviet army began pushing the Germans back west. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, Western Allies, mainly USA, UK, Canada, invaded Normandy, France, opening a Western front in Europe. Paris was liberated later in 1944. By May 1945, Allied armies from west and east converged into Germany. Hitler committed suicide in April 1945 as Soviet troops entered Berlin, and Germany surrendered on May 7-8, 1945. This ended the war in Europe, known as VE Day. Meanwhile, during the war, Hitler's regime had carried out the Holocaust, the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews, as well as millions of others, including Romani people, disabled people, Polish and Soviet civilians, prisoners of war, etc. The world would only fully grasp the horror of concentration camps like Auschwitz as they were liberated in 1945. The Holocaust is a stark reminder of the evil of racism and intolerance. In the Pacific, Japan fought on. The U.S. began retaking territories Japan had conquered, island by island. This was very bloody, as at Iwo Jima and Okinawa in 1945. In an effort to force Japan's surrender without a costly invasion of the Japanese mainland, the United States used a new, incredibly powerful weapon, the atomic bomb. In August 1945, the U.S. dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, causing unprecedented destruction and loss of life. Japan announced its surrender on August 15, 1945, ending World War II. World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history, causing an estimated 60 million deaths, about 3% of the world's population at that time. It left much of Europe and Asia in ruins. But out of it, a new hope for peace arose in 1945. Nations formed the United Nations, UN, an international organization meant to prevent future wars and foster cooperation. The League of Nations, the UN, had broader membership, including the US this time, and more authority.